We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
And now people are like, don't do that again.
What's up, guys? Your boy Benny. It sucks to suck. What's it like to be wrong all the time is what I'm saying to the New York Times right now. Why are the New York Times always wrong all the times? The New York Times just published a hit piece on me and other YouTube creators. Super weak beer, by the way. Oh, YouTubers have said that there needs to be stricter voting rules and laws because the voting laws are broken in this country and need reform. That actually sounds like a very responsible thing to say. Like, if you loved this place and if you wanted there to be free and fair elections, these are the kind of things that you would want. You'd want there to be national voter ID, single day voting, paper ballots. You'd want the kind of things that would make the election, well, irrefutable to people speculating upon the results, and more importantly, to cases of actual criminal fraud, of which there are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. The Election Fraud Database from the Heritage Foundation can show you page upon page upon page of, not speculation, actual literal criminal convictions. Criminal conviction, criminal conviction, criminal conviction. Let's see, what do we have here? Ineligible voting, duplicate voting, fraudulent use of absentee ballots, buying votes, fraudulent use of absentee votes, buying votes, election overturned, ineligible voting. I mean, these are all legal cases that have been decided state or federal for real election fraud. And there are thousands upon thousands of them. So we just start with that, all right? Let's start with the criminal convictions. New York Times, strangely, didn't mention any of that in their massive hit job against me and Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson. They didn't mention any of this. They didn't mention that there are thousands of criminal convictions for voter fraud all across the country, in every state. They also didn't mention that there are criminal aliens literally voting in our election right now. So the New York Times article, they come for me and say that Benny, well, he is spewing lies that people who are not citizens of America, who are foreign nationals, may come here and vote in our elections. How dangerous. How irresponsible. How terrifying and how silly of me to say that, given the fact that, well, never happens, right? Of course, this couldn't happen here in America. The New York Times says so, except for, I guess, a paper that has a better track record of truth, at least in this instance. The Detroit Free Press has something to say to you, New York Times, as criminal charges filed against non-citizen voter in Michigan. Uh-oh. What's going on here? I read to you from the, I'm sure, extremely right-wing Detroit Free Press, the newspaper in Detroit. A prosecutor in Michigan, county prosecutor in Michigan, has authorized criminal charges against a non-citizen who registered to vote and cast a ballot at an early voting location on Sunday in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson's office announced. In a new release, the Secretary of State office indicated that non-citizen was charged with one count of making an unauthorized attempt to vote, a felony offense, and one charge of perjury for making a false affidavit to register to vote. We are grateful for the swift action of a clerk in the case who took the appropriate steps, or law enforcement, Benson says. Well, we are grateful to law enforcement for swiftly and thoroughly investigating the case. Anybody who attempts to vote illegally faces significant consequences. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and read what happened. There was a student from China who was in Michigan to study. And that student decided to register to vote and then to vote and successfully cast a ballot. That student now will have their ballot counted, as there is no way for the state to remove a single ballot from their system. So, dear individuals in Michigan and every American, you have just had the entire 2024 election tainted because your vote was canceled. My vote was just canceled. Let's just use me as an example. I'm going to cast a vote for Donald Trump. I'll tell you who I'll vote for. Let's say this individual did not vote for Donald Trump. If you're a Chinese national, it seems like Kamala Harris being quite Marxist in her own tautology, and then picking some guy who literally has the world's smallest hard-on for China. You'd assume maybe this guy would vote for Kamala Harris. So let's say that he did. I don't know who this Chinese student voted for. But if this Chinese student voted for Kamala Harris, they have eliminated, they have neutralized my vote in the national vote count, because their vote will now count against mine. And that means my vote doesn't count. Kamala Harris +1, Trump +1. So you just eliminated my vote. How does that make you feel? This is a non-citizen, this is a Chinese national that is registering and voting in our election. Why? Well, because Michigan doesn't require voter ID. That's why. Why? Because Michigan doesn't have a system to go stop illegal voting. Why? Well, because Michigan doesn't have the capacity to go in and remove an illegal vote from the system, which should absolutely be a capacity you should have. You should absolutely have watermarks on ballots, barcodes on ballots, so there's a record of this. And so if somebody who's a Chinese communist can't come in here and rig our elections. Even worse, the state of Michigan is, of course, a swing state. How many other criminal illegal aliens? Well, I don't know if this person's criminal. If they're studying here, maybe they're on a student visa, right? Okay, but how about this? How many other foreign nationals, foreign aliens, as they are termed, have voted in the election in Michigan? If one student can do it, then why not 20,000 students that are studying there? Why not? The student in Michigan was caught because they turned themselves in. They effectively tried to go back and get their ballot. So this is why it's so important that you had to go to the damn Supreme Court to eliminate non-citizen voters from the Virginia voter rolls. Virginia found thousands of non-citizen voters on their voter rolls. Guess who sued to stop this from happening? The removal of these non-citizens. The Biden Justice Department. Virginia had to go fight in court, fight all the way up to the Supreme Court in order to remove the non-citizens from their voter rolls. Here's how it's being covered in Michigan.
How were they able to pull that off?
Well, this appears to be a situation where this individual allegedly used the U of M student ID to register to vote, and what happened next has the whole country talking right now. The University of Michigan and Greater Ann Arbor rocked by criminal charges filed against a non-U.S. citizen who cast a ballot during early voting last weekend, according to state election officials. Sources identifying the suspect as a U of M student from China authorized to study in the United States but not to vote here because he is not a citizen. When you first heard about this, what was your first thought?
It's weird. But people do weird stuff all the time.
Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson and Washtenaw County Prosecutor Ellie Savitt confirming the non-citizen voter whose name has not been released was charged with unauthorized elector attempting to vote and perjury making a false affidavit for purpose of securing voter registration. This after officials say he voted at an Ann Arbor early voting site this past Sunday. Sources say the student used his university ID among other documents to register to vote and identified himself as a U.S. citizen by signing a document. The ballot was entered into the machine for tabulation.
The way they process the ballots after they're dropped for early voting, I have confidence that they would be able to filter that out.
We're told the student reached out to the clerk's office to get the ballot back, possibly alerting election workers in the process. What's more, officials say that ballot will most likely count because ballots cannot be taken back once processed in the tabulator.
So, see that, Michigan? If you are a voter in Michigan, then you just had your vote canceled by the criminal alien who voted. CNN threw a rage fit when Virginia, which had to fight to the Supreme Court in order to stop criminal aliens from voting in their state, won. CNN saying the quiet part out loud. Now that illegals cannot vote in Virginia, Trump may win. Oh, wow. Well. An absolute and total despicable system that eliminates or neutralizes or invalidates the votes of Americans whose families lived here, their parents, grandparents, brothers and sisters fought and died here, are buried here. This is a great place for Americans. If you come here legally through the process, then it's a great place for immigrants too. We have a right and an obligation to protect this place. And the left is doing everything within their power to ensure that our voices no longer matter. These sick bastards say they are the defenders of the democracy. It is the absolute opposite. It is a forked tongue lie. And this is why it has to be too big to rig. This is why. This is why it has to be too big to rig, as Trump says. Because there are shenanigans about. GOP just had to sue in order to keep the polling places open early in Buck County, Pennsylvania, where creepy election officials were wandering around closing them. They were actually activists for the Democrat Party. Shenanigans abound, ladies and gentlemen. So be on the lookout, be on the watch. Here's proof positive that a non-citizen voted and tainted the election result in Michigan, along with who knows what else. So keep praying, all right? We're going to win. It's your boy Benny. Like, share, and subscribe.